20-plus yard touchdown pass, as a 7 seed. You're like, all right, what's happening here? The most impressive thing to me in that game was how methodical the Bills were. There was no sense of panic. There was no sense of, okay, we got to get this back right away. Let's just calm down. Let's play our game. Let's do our stuff. And I think that comes with all the experience that they've had in the postseason. There's not much that Josh Allen and the Bills haven't seen and things that they haven't dealt with. And, the kick at the end of the half, maybe if it's tied at 10, then it gets a little tighter in the second half. But then, from the middle of the second quarter on, the Bills just wore them down. I mean, I was looking at some of the stats at halftime: time of possession, number of first downs. It was really, really very much a one-sided in favor of Buffalo, and that stuff tends to add up in the third and fourth quarter, and that's what we saw. You just saw a team that had been there, done that, knew who they were, and were like, okay, we took their best shot, but we're not going to panic, and we're just going to play our game. And then you have, the unicorn in Josh Allen, who can do anything he wants to do. So
we're going to get into this Baltimore matchup here in a minute, but so much has been made about Derrick Henry, Lamar Jackson, that combination, and rightfully so. I mean, watching Derrick Henry on Saturday night was probably scary for fan bases around the AFC, the ones that are left. But I think what you saw on Sunday was quietly what's turned into one of the top tandems in the league between James Cook and Josh Allen. You have Allen, who can hit you in the run game, can obviously do what he does in the passing game. But James Cook is a little bit different this year. He's running harder. He's more physical. He's a true threat in the red zone. What have you made of James Cook?
Yeah, he's been great for Josh. And, the way Joe Brady, despite what Josh likes to say, has done great things for them and incorporating James in those situations. He's putting him in the right spots. And before we get on to the matchup and anything else, I do want to say very clearly, I think I don't have a vote, but if I had a vote and it was between Josh and Lamar, I would vote for Josh, because it's so obvious when you watch the Ravens how much attention Derrick Henry gets, and deservedly so, and the things that he's going to do for them. If Josh Allen isn't on the Bills, there is no Bills offense. It's not taking away from Shakur or the two tight ends or Cook or so many. The 4th and 1 play on the touchdown in the back of the end zone. It's like, come on. I mean, that's pure Josh Allen. Okay, that's him. That's Mahomesian stuff right there. And I know that's a horrible thing to say in Buffalo, but there was nothing there. There was nothing there, and he made it. He made a touchdown. Like he made that touchdown. He willed that touchdown into existence. So when I look at how Lamar and Derrick Henry coexist together, and now you have to worry about both of them, and you do have to worry about James Cook. I want to be clear; he's a very good, talented running back. But to me, those two playoff games were an indication as to why, if I had a vote, I would vote for Josh. It's taking nothing away from Lamar, but I think there's a much, much bigger burden of responsibility on Josh's shoulders in Buffalo than there is on Lamar's shoulders in Baltimore.
There's been so much nastiness in this conversation on social media the last month around the MVP conversation. Josh, just useless. But I think the genesis of this is two fan bases that know how close their teams are to knocking the Chiefs potentially off the mountain, and the anxiety that comes from that. I think that's where all of this is born out of. So I wonder, looking at this game, we know the success that Josh Allen has had in the playoffs. Lamar, not so much. Who do you feel like has more pressure in this game to deliver? You had the Baltimore Ravens as the 1 seed last year, not able to get through to the Super Bowl. And now this year, whoever wins this game is probably still going to have to go through the Chiefs in the next round. So you get this heavyweight fight and then turn around the next week and do it again. Who do you feel like has the more pressure, quarterback and team?
I would say the Ravens, because that's only – look, the best way I can describe it is that was only Lamar Jackson's 3rd playoff win. And I'm not a huge wins or quarterback stat guy. But, before that game against the Steelers, Lamar Jackson was averaging in regular season games, I think the number was 28.7 points per game, which was the most points per game for a starting quarterback as far back as they've been keeping stats since 1950. Right, that's 1950 is the line of demarcation when the NFL said, we should probably be looking into this stuff as some sort of statistical database. And 1950 was the year. So 28.7 points per game. when Lamar Jackson's under center for the Ravens offense. Best for any quarterback, minimum, whatever, 9 starts, I think, since 1950. And then you go to the postseason. Before that game, Saturday night against the Steelers, Lamar's postseason offenses were averaging 16 points per game. That is a significant drop-off. And we saw that change when they were up 21-0 at the half, and they only needed 1 second-half touchdown to really sort of salt that game away against the Steelers. So I think there's still this lingering doubt of, okay, like, I'm going to see this. We've seen the Bills on multiple occasions win multiple games in the postseason. And I do think there's more pressure on the Ravens in this situation, and especially because they're going to be on the road. And how's he going to respond on the road? You mentioned what is going to happen. I mean, like, it's sort of unfortunate, but it's just the way it goes. Like, with all due respect to the Texans and CJ Stroud, I don't think that's going to be much of a problem for Kansas City. So now, to get to where you want to go, instead of having to go through Lamar and Josh, really the Chiefs only have to go through one of those guys, one of those super teams. But that, I guess, you could say that's the benefit of being the number 1 seed, and what they did in the regular season. It does seem like, okay, let's just say for Buffalo, you got to take an upstart Denver team that had more sacks than anybody, and the offensive line was amazing for the Bills yesterday, absolutely phenomenal. You got to take care of those guys, and Bo Nix, a really good young quarterback. Then you got to take care of Lamar. And then if you do that, then you got to go through Arrowhead in Kansas City. I mean, that's a lot. And it's certainly a much more difficult road to hoe than it would be for Kansas City.
We're hanging out with Trey Wingo from the DraftKings Sports Network. Take a second here, Trey, and let everybody know where they can find you throughout the week. And how much do things ramp up for you in the NFL playoffs?
Oh, quite a bit. Yeah, as we're taping this, we're getting ready to do our pregame power up tonight, 6:00 Eastern, live on DraftKings Network. Looking forward to the final game of the wild card weekend between the Rams and the Vikings, and then we have a pregame show Sunday for divisional play round, and then we also will have conference championship Sunday show, and then we'll be in New Orleans all week long doing shows Tuesday through Sunday, getting you ready for Super Bowl 59. So yeah, it's the best time of the year, and honestly. To me, divisional weekend is the best weekend because you have the best teams, right, that get through and make it. And then you have 2 games on Saturday and then 2 games on Sunday. That, to me, is the best weekend in football all season long. Now, Championship Sunday, to me, I think is better than the Super Bowl because if any player is honest about it, all they want is the opportunity. Give me the opportunity to play on Super Bowl Sunday and just give me that chance. If you lose, and Buffalo fans know this as well as anyone, if you lose on Championship Sunday, it is the worst. It is the worst because you're like, we didn't get our opportunity. And I know losing the Super Bowl is no fun. I get it. But at least every player that gets there will say, hey, I had my shot. It didn't work out, but at least I got to play on that stage. And when you lose on Championship Sunday, I think it's more brutal than losing the Super Bowl. I really believe that. And so, like, divisional round weekend for me is the best weekend of the year. Championship Sunday to me is the best single day of the entire football season.
No, you are right on the money. And I know Bills fans are hoping that the Bills make it to the Super Bowl. I do too, just so we can hang out that week in New Orleans and do all this stuff. I was talking to a colleague about it yesterday. I've never covered a Super Bowl. He's covered a few with the Bills not being there. And it's like, that's just one of like the bucket list kind of items for a beat reporter is just getting to kind of do that thing on the national stage. So that'd be fun.
Yeah, it's great. And Super Bowl week is insane. There's so many things that have nothing to do with the game. And that's the hardest part for all the players is like, okay, it's a business trip. Let's just keep that in mind because there's so many distractions going on all over the place. You just don't think about it until you get there and you're like, holy crap, I'm overwhelmed with everything that's going on right now.
I want to get to the Bills defense versus the Baltimore Ravens offense here in a second, because I think that's, when I told people I was catching up with you today, that's one of the big things that's on everybody's mind is how is this Bills defense going to match up against them? Before we get there, let's pay the bills. We're brought to you by Tops Friendly Markets. They have ready to serve fan favorites. And if you let them do the cooking, you'll be the MVP this January. Visit shop.topsmarkets.com. Elevate your food game with great selection of custom cakes, desserts, pizza, sandwiches, and so much more. Score great deals in time for kickoff at shop.topsmarkets.com. All right. Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry, about as scariest duo as you could face in the NFL today. The Bills defense, it's interesting because one of the things that I don't think has gotten enough play here over the last couple of weeks in the build-up to this thing. Terrell Bernard, Matt Milano, Taron Johnson, all out of that game when they met in week 4. Baltimore ran over them. It was in Baltimore. It shifts to Buffalo this time around. How do you feel like this Bills defense that held the Denver Broncos, the running backs, at 35 yards yesterday matches up against Lamar and Derrick Henry?
Well, if they hold Derrick Henry to 35 yards, you guys are heading to Arrowhead. Okay, assuming that the Chiefs beat the Texans. Look, Matt Milano. One of the best plays of that entire game for me yesterday was they had Matt Milano. Basically, he was a spy on Bo Nix, and Bo Nix is pretty rangy, pretty fast, all that kind of stuff. And but Matt Milano is a rangy guy that can cover a lot of ground. Now, Lamar is a totally different dynamic, and you're going to have to deal with that. That first meeting, they took it to you guys pretty good in the regular season. It was that 2-game stretch where Josh played his 2 worst games of the season. That one, and then the game against the Texans. Was he 9 of 30 in that game or something like that? Absolutely crazy. And Sean had that sort of curious decision to keep throwing from it inside his own 5-yard line at the end of the game. But I don't know how you stop Derrick Henry. You hope that you can just not let me like. Pittsburgh gave him free runs. It just felt like they were never even in the picture defensively at times. So that can't happen. You gotta swarm to the ball. You gotta game tackle. The thing about Derrick, okay, and this sounds crazy, but if you go back and look at his career, for as big as he is not a guy that sort of explodes through the line. He sort of takes a couple of steps and gets going. And once he gets ahead of steam, he's impossible. The key to stopping Derrick Henry is to meet him at the point of the attack and gang tackle before he gets his legs underneath him. And I know that sounds ridiculous because he's a big bruising back, but go watch. Look at the tape. He's a guy that sort of, I don't want to say he lopes to the line, but he doesn't explode to the hole, right? That's not the way he is. He sort of needs those first 2 steps, sort of gather them like Fred Flintstone starting the car, and he needs to sort of get that going. And once he has that, you're done. So what you have to do is meet him at the point of attack and meet him with more than one element. And that's the only way to do it. Because if you let him get a yard or 2 yards past the line of scrimmage, well, you're in for a long afternoon. Then you're looking at 7 yards, 8 yards, 5 yards, 6 yards of carry, and that stiff arm comes out in the third quarter. People are making business decisions, even in a postseason game. So you have to stop him at the point of attack at the line of scrimmage. That has got to be the thing that they have to sort of anticipate and work on and really, really make sure they perfect going into this game.
It's so interesting because the Bills defense historically has had a bunch of matchups with Derrick Henry. They've had their good games against him. They've had their bad games against him. He's played 6, so 5 in Tennessee, and then this one in Baltimore earlier in the season. And I feel like the vibes, it's a little bit different because this Baltimore offense, I just feel like from a confidence perspective, they don't panic, right? Like I don't think you're going to necessarily get him in that spot. But I think the key to slowing down Derrick Henry specifically over the years has been when you neutralize him early in the game, force a couple punts, get your offense scoring, get it, play from ahead at home, maybe force an early turnover. That to me is one of the critical pieces to this. Do you feel like everything you've seen from Buffalo's defense, obviously last week against Bo Nix, they came off a game where they scored 38 against the JV Chiefs team the week before, but what you see from this Bills defense, can they do that? Are they built to do that? Do they need to do that? Or can they just lean on Josh Allen and try to win maybe what turns into a shootout?
Well, look, the Ravens lost 5 games this year. Okay. They lost 5 games through a myriad of different ways. They were outscored a couple times against Pittsburgh. One time they couldn't get their offense really going. The loss to the Raiders, I'll never understand at home week 2, but that's football, right? Everybody has a game like that where something just doesn't go right. And obviously week 1 to start the season was a very different deal against Kansas City Chiefs, and that their offense is completely different and their offensive line is much better now than it was in that Thursday night opener in Arrowhead. I think you have to say to yourself, okay, our intention is to slow down Derrick Henry and try and keep this under control, but we have to understand that may not happen. And if it is, then it's all attack all the time on defense, or on offense rather, for Josh. Now that Ravens defense has changed dramatically during the season too. They were really horrific through the air through the first half of the season, but then they switched up the safeties and put Kyle Hamilton back to where he should be playing. And you go look at the numbers down the stretch. It is a very, very different Ravens defense, especially through the air, that you'll be facing. So there's going to be a lot of pressure on Josh to do kind of what he did against that Broncos team. He's going to have to make something out of nothing when things aren't there, because there will be times when you're not going to have the receivers open that you were looking for. And Josh is going to have to make 4 or 5 of those plays that he tends to do in almost every game to keep those drives going and keep that offense alive.
All right, we talked about New Orleans. I'm going to get you out of here on this. How do the next couple of weeks go here? Bills, Ravens, Chiefs, Texans this weekend. How do you kind of see it all playing out as we kind of work through the rest of these playoffs?
Well, let's start with the other game, the Chiefs Texans, because that's the game on Saturday. You guys are the pinnacle game on Sunday, which is going to be a lot of fun. Unless the Chiefs come out and absolutely bleep the bed, I just don't see it. And people, they're concerned about the rest factor or the rust factor. Well, I would remind you that Andy Reid's record as a head coach is 29-5 with a bye. That is, yes, by far the best in the history of the NFL, and that includes postseason. I do not expect that to be a problem for Kansas City. I feel like the Chiefs have waited all season long just to get to this point. You play as many games as they have the last few years. You're just like, okay, the regular season is fine, but we know that nothing matters until the playoffs. So can we just get there? I don't think it's a surprise that the last game they tried to win, where they played everybody, was arguably their most complete game of the season. They beat Pittsburgh by 19 in Pittsburgh. They're healthier and deeper than they've been all season. Hollywood Brown is there. DeAndre is there. Juju is there. Xavier Worthy is there. They have both running backs. They have both tight ends. And I think the defense is good enough. I don't see much of a problem for the Texans unless the unthinkable happens. I do think it's going to be a very, very difficult game between Buffalo and Baltimore. But again, I think the onus is on Lamar. And I think that if you can get him off his spots and get them off to a slow start, what did they do in the AFC Championship game last year against the Chiefs? I think they handed it off to running backs 6 times in that game. They got behind a little bit, and suddenly it took them out of what they wanted to do. Now, again, that wasn't Derrick Henry last year. They didn't have Derrick Henry. We still don't know what's going on with Zay Flowers and his availability for this week. But if you can get them, the Ravens like to play like the Bills. They like to play bully ball. They like to get up on you and then just ground you into the dirt. If you can hang with them and don't let them go off to a slow start and get a lead, I think you have a real opportunity to sort of get them out of their comfort zone. And then it's, okay, how are they going to respond? Because in playoffs past, this hasn't gone very well for them.
Yeah.
And I'm picking Buffalo. In that case, I'm picking Buffalo there.
Okay. Couple quick things that, to follow up on. First of all, I think it's interesting from a Bills perspective. Over the last couple of weeks, they've really leaned fully into their jumbo personnel package, right? Alec Anderson comes out on the field. They go 6th offensive line. Reggie Gilliam, their fullback, all of a sudden they're doing a little bit more I formation, two backs in the backfield, 2 tight ends out in the thing. Could you see over the next couple of weeks, maybe Joe Brady creatively maybe flipping the script as all these teams are gearing up big-bodied to stop the run game? And then now all of a sudden you have Curtis Samuel who's coming on, who when they went out and got him, they got him because he's a separator. You have Amari Cooper, who's that man beater. Can you see the aerial game of the Bills offense maybe coming out here over the next week or two?
Yeah. But again, the Ravens defense is very different than it was when you guys first met them in that game. That was a Sunday night game, right? In Baltimore.
Yeah.
It's a totally different defense. But yeah, you have to try these things, right? And Curtis had a huge play, obviously, in that win over the Denver Broncos. You're going to have all hands on deck. Everybody's going to have to contribute. That game really turned when the Broncos had a few drops. They had a few empty possessions, and lo and behold, suddenly they found themselves behind the 8 ball. You got to play your best ball this time of the year, and everybody's going to have to contribute. That's the only way you're going to take care of the Baltimore Ravens.
All right. That is the 20-minute mark. I'm going to get you out of here. Let everybody know one last time anything that you want to shout out for this week and beyond.
Yeah, pregame power up all season long and all playoff season long. DraftKings Network, you can check it out. Sunday, next 2 Sundays, division round of conference championship, 11 o'clock Eastern. We have the show tonight, 6 o'clock Eastern. Then we'll be in New Orleans all week long. You can follow me on my socials at Wingos or Trey.Wingo on Instagram, and like Trey.Wingo on Threads and whatever Blue Sky is. I don't know. Put some stuff out there as well. So we're just doing all that and getting ready for what should be a really fun end of the football season.
Awesome stuff, Trey. Thank you so much.
You got it, man.